Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the stream. Hope everybody's well. I've had a busy day. I finally managed to complete my monitor setup. Now I've got all three the same monitor. Well, more or less. One's a slightly different model, but it's almost identical. and a whole kind of mount system and everything. Everything's much more neat and tidy, and I've been doing cable management. Therefore, I'm a little bit knackered. It's hard work doing cable management, but especially in a small room like this. But I hope everybody's had a good week. It is Saturday night, and we've got a bit of a double bill for you folks. We are starting off with A Nightmare on Elm Street, the classic Wes Craven movie, and then we're going to be moving on to Butcher Baker, Nightmare Maker. It's a bit of a warm night tonight, so if I have to run off for some water and stuff, you'll have to excuse me. I do have cold beers, though. So that is very, very good. Yeah. Tonight's show is going to be a bring your own media thing. There are links down below in the description. So there's links to the YouTube and Amazon Prime. Either that, or you bring your own media. So you can, ideally, it would be Blu-ray. If it's if it's like a British or European DVD, it might be a bit of a problem with the speed. So it is what it is. This is how we have to do these things. I will be watching The Nightmare on Elm Street on the Prime version, and I will be watching Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker on this Blu-ray right here, the Severin, very good release. So good evening, John, Iris, and to everybody else that's there, the captain. Yeah, it's been a bit of a day today in some respects. My housemate's turned out she's caught COVID, so yeah, it's a little bit funny in the house at the moment. It'll be all right. It's just kind of like having to sort of keep a little bit of distance from each other. I've already got a little bit of a summer cold as it is. Could do without that, especially on my long weekends and stuff like that. But it is what it is. And yes, it's quite warm in here. It's probably going to get warmer because I've moved my computer down here now, and so all the hot air is going to blast out from underneath here, I guess. But it is what it is. I don't think we've got Kerry tonight, just so you know. I think she has run off to do some stuff of her responsibilities. That is fine. I'm sure she'll catch us up on the on playback. So hello, Kerry. Thinking of you. I enjoyed doing our joint stream the other week. That was very, very good, and hopefully I will get somebody else on at some point in the not too distant future. I keep saying I'm going to get John on at some point, and I really ought to make that effort. It's just a little bit more effort sometimes to do these things, and I get a bit lazy. But there you go. To make up for the laziness, obviously we're watching the two films tonight. So what I will say is, because we have basically two films of 130 minutes, well, one's 130, other's 132. So get yourselves queued up for A Nightmare on Elm Street, and we will get started in the next few minutes. Otherwise, we'll be going on till way past 11:30, maybe midnight. And it's more or less kind of like what the sort of time it will be finished is about 11:30-ish. So I don't suppose my brother will stay up for the entirety of it, but there we go. I think he's watching. But in the meantime, because I was away at my brother's last week, of course we went scavenging CEX and stuff like that, and buying up some stuff. I got some games. I won't show you those today, but one interesting one I got was Beverly Hills Cop. It's the VHS packaged edition, which is kind of fun. So that opens up, and then obviously it's not an actual VHS, but there's a poster, there's a couple of posters, a couple of little cards and stuff in there, and two Blu-rays, I should say, with extras and all that kind of stuff. Kind of a neat little thing, really. So yeah, just a kind of fun little thing, really. I did accidentally buy 2 copies, not this version. I got what I thought was the Blu-ray for Beverly Hills Cop 2, and then I kind of screwed up. I seem to be on a bit of an 80s action film sort of ride at the moment, so what with all the Schwarzenegger stuff. And watching it, I just I forgot how much fun it was. It is such a good film. Speaking of Beverly Hills Cop, the new one, oh dear. Okay, I heard it. I was told it was quite good, but I obviously haven't seen it. It's a bit hard to capture the feel of it because there's something very kind of it's got rough edges to that one, which you're probably not going to get with any kind of new ones, and certainly that was the big problem with I think the third one was it felt a bit too polished. And it was trying to go over a whole bunch of old ground. And it didn't really work for me. I don't think I thought it was an absolutely terrible film, but I don't think I kind of watched it and I wasn't very impressed. So next one, I picked up because I discovered just HMV is now a thing again. My brother and I, like I said, went into Leicester, and the big shop was still there, so that was kind of cool. So we went in, and I bought. See if there's a theme here. So all the Arrow, well, not all of them, but 3 of the Arrow Herschel Gordon Lewis movies, and I'm really kind of chuffed with that. They were quite cheap. They were on sale, so I think they were like £8 a piece or something like that. So I'm kind of looking forward to checking out these editions. Should be kind of cool. Good evening, Minty. You have a rip of the original CBS Fox Elm Street. Recorded it when it was originally released by using 2 VHS recorders. That was very naughty because you wouldn't steal a handbag, would you? Another one which I just found. I think this is CEX. I found this in, and I kind of went, okay, it's a Joe D'Amato film, which I haven't seen, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. Joe D'Amato is one of those directors in the same sort of ilk of Jess Franco and yeah. The name's gone right out of my head at the moment, but the Jess Franco kind of series of directors from the Euro horror films that has kind of interested me, for a long time. One of those with some really, really good stuff and some really, really bad stuff and some stuff which is bad but very enjoyable at the same time. Obviously, the guy that did a couple of the big name nasties as well. You have Beyond Darkness on DVD too. Okay. Yes. Yeah, I managed to get it on Blu-ray, so I try to get stuff on Blu-ray more than DVD these days, but if it feels like that, it's sort of hit or miss depending on as to whether or not it's worth it. But I also picked up this happened to be kind of lying around in CEX as well for a reasonable price, so picked that up. I've been meaning to watch this for a very long time, so now I've got it. And it's not much of a package there, but it's got quite a few extras on it, I think. It's a few extras. Deleted scenes, commentary from Jodorowsky and journalist Alan Jones. Alan Jones seems to be popping up on an awful lot of stuff just recently as a commentator, which is kind of interesting. Speaking of CEX, I have a gripe with them. Long gone are the pre-COVID days of ordering online in the morning and DVD showing up the following day. Lucky it was the same way. This one big problem with CEX is the kind of ordering online. It can take a fair amount of time, and it's a very expensive thing. So if you go like shopping for Blu-rays or DVDs and stuff like that on CEX, and you're paying postage sometimes for all the time for each and every item, which is a little bit ridiculous, really. But there you go. That's just how it is. But Santa Sangre. Really looking forward to watching that one. Try and get that watched this weekend. So yeah. Also recorded a few other videos. Unfortunately, my copies of Electric Blue that I recorded as an 80s kid Oh, long gone. Well, it's a very British institution in the VHS world. It's one of the things about VHS back in the day was because, particularly in the earlier days, like the late 70s, early 80s, a lot of the stuff that sort of appeared on them was just stuff that you wouldn't get anywhere else, really. Big cinema, I would say big studios and stuff, and big name films just weren't that interested in being on the format. So there was a lot of stuff sort of filled in, and because there was the lack of regulation, say via the BBFC, all sorts of stuff would turn up on that. The only thing that it was really subject to was the Obscene Publications Act, of course. But okay, so we won't hang around for much longer, so just start giving me thumbs up when you're ready to get started on Elm Street, and we will get cracking with that movie, because you know what, it's been a long time since I've seen Nightmare on Elm Street series. I'm trying to think if there's any that I haven't seen. I don't think there is. I did pick up a big box set of them at one point. I think it's just the DVDs. So I'm going to have to work my way through them again at some point. A lot of lost TV seems to be preserved by people recording on VHS. Yes, off-air stuff has saved an awful lot. Off-air recording has saved an awful lot of cultural history when it comes to films and stuff. I think Doctor Who, for the likes of things. Sometimes archival footage of like news, even things like that. It is, I mean, it's always derided as being piracy, and it was one of the big things that was always a big argument when VHS started coming out. The TV was like, "Oh, start stealing our stuff," and it's not like they were really losing any money at it at the time. I mean, maybe later when movies started coming out and people would pirate them, they would lose money. But I've always felt the argument was kind of overblown. Very overblown. Very selective in the arguments against. Joe D'Amato, very interesting film and great soundtrack. Oh, okay. Yeah. Joe D'Amato is one of those directors, I think, that he did have a very interesting career. It's probably the least you can say about the guy. Yes, he did the trashy stuff like, Absurd and Anthropophagus. Both films I really enjoyed, by the way. And he did a lot of porn, obviously. He kind of did the... he did just some straight up porn, and of course the sort of genre crossing sort of stuff, and zombies and that kind of stuff. Porno Holocaust was one, obviously. I suppose if you have a blank VHS, you could still record TV. I think you would have to go through a few adapters to actually get it to feed into a SCART socket, but yeah, why not? It would be interesting, actually, to see kind of how it works. Obviously, a lot of the tech surrounding it's changed, but there should be converters and stuff like that that would work. I mean, I have VHS cassettes and stuff like that, and I can play them through my computer and record them. So, yeah, there's no reason why you can't do it the other way around. I wouldn't have thought so anyway. Although I don't suppose there's many people who would want to kind of do it the other way around these days. That would be a little unusual. But I think some people have done it as kind of effects and stuff like that. Just as a genuine way of capturing that VHS feel. Recently saw TV Glow. VHS is a significant part of that movie. Yeah, it's got a sort of something of a mystique about it these days, I think, or at least kind of like nostalgic kind of thing. And there's qualities of it, I think, that people find genuinely kind of uncanny, I guess, if you didn't grow up with it particularly. Seeing that kind of style of footage is probably a little bit jarring. That low resolution. We live in a day where 4K is a must and all that sort of stuff. And it's always a problem, actually. It's, a lot of those videos really benefited from the shrouding of low kind of image quality to an extent. It did kind of help that stuff. A lot of films kind of appear a lot more terrifying, I guess. Do I like Alice Cooper? Yes, I'm not a super fan, but I've enjoyed plenty of Alice Cooper. People gloss over poor picture quality and its tendency to wear away quickly. The thing was, it wasn't particularly bad quality for the time. That's the thing. It was perfectly acceptable back in the day. It wasn't broadcast quality, but it was close enough for most people's tastes. It's interesting when you see the history of like VHS and Betamax, and a lot of people make a big deal about Betamax being higher quality, but it's almost a technicality. It's not significantly, not to the point that I think that most people, most casual viewers would actually notice. But yeah, bring your own media and bring your own beer. Absolutely. We are going to get started in just a couple of minutes, guys. In fact, actually, we ought to get started now. If I can just get like a little ready or a thumbs up or something like that from you guys, enough of you guys, then we will get going. Video nasties look too clean on Blu-ray. Needs to be 10th generation and weird looking for my taste. Yes, the quality of the copy of Texas Chainsaw that I've got makes it look about 10 times more terrifying. It's kind of fun. I do like the VHS boxes, have a number including VTC, gold puffy cases. Yes, I've got a few of those as well. All my VHS are kind of currently up on top of the cupboard at the moment because I've got nowhere to put them. At least for the time being. John's ready. Excellent. Okay. If John's ready, then we're all ready, aren't we? Fantastic. I tell you what, folks, we are going to get started now so we can get through this before it hits Sunday, hopefully. So we are starting with A Nightmare on Elm Street, and we are going to go on the counter. I'm just going to prep mine. There we go. Right, we're going to start on the count of 3, and we'll go 3, 2, 1, and we'll go and go. So 3, 2, 1, go. Do you guys think some video nasties or extreme horror can be harmful if intended to sexually arouse the viewer? And that's, I think any art form could be kind of thought of in those sort of terms. I don't think it's just horror. Horror is an easy target because it is a more niche thing. But there is one truth about humanity is if it can be sexualized, it will be sexualized. And that will be anything. It's not... Some people get turned on by sitting on balloons, for God's sake. People will find a way. Now, this is the whole kind of thing, which is such a fallacy behind banning porn and stuff like that, is... like it's the only time it's the only thing that's going to cause that kind of corruption. Video nasty certainly had a lot of that when it came to people saying, it'll deprave and corrupt and all this kind of stuff. At the same time, the House of Commons were basically arguing against banning porn. Graham Bright wanted to ban porn, but the most of the other MPs didn't, including Conservatives, funny enough, for the most part. It's one of the things about this film is the credit sequence doesn't half look cheap. I think it's easy to forget that this is a pretty low budget film. I don't know what the budget was, but it wasn't a lot. And it kind of shows, especially with the more high definition home playback that you've got these days. Now, I do remember when this came out, and the first time I got to watch it, and it is one of those genuinely unnerving kind of films. And there is something about this first one, and to an extent the second one, which actually do feel somewhat, well, quite removed from the subsequent ones. I think it's really from the third one onwards that they started to kind of corrupt the character of Freddy to be this much more comedic thing. Because the humour in the first one particularly is it's a lot less comic than it is kind of insidious, if you know what I mean. I think violence forms of porn are different from potentially. I mean, you can argue that there's certain types of material which would be considered harmful. Certainly, the BBFC do. Their rules when it comes to R18 are pretty stringent. Just listening to the chat for Nightmare on Elm Street. Yeah, have the DVDs here, but no player. Oh no. What we forget about Mr. Kruger is that he was an excellent welder. I think that's important to remember. He was a working man, wasn't he? It's an interesting little moment, isn't it? Yeah, because the rather seedy guy, I don't know if it is actually dead. It was just one of bits on the side, that kind of stuff. Don't think you find that out. But it's kind of all putting that little seed of information into what the parents are actually like. You know, kind of how they've got their own faults, not least being murderers and a mob, albeit, you know, against a guy that probably deserves it. But then that was actually one of the interesting things with the remake, was it's sort of questioning who he was. Did they actually get the right guy, at least for a little bit? Don't know why that's doing that. Worked in a boiler room, yet always wore a sweater. Yes. If you fantasize about violence for years and ultimately pursue it, people do get hurt. That's not necessarily the case for us. You know, I think for plenty of people, fantasies are just that. Yeah, I think, Captain, we say I think violence forms of porn are different even from fetish stuff. Yes and no. I mean, actually, the point is just that getting rid of porn per se, even slightly kind of weirder stuff, is not necessarily going to be there. I don't think there's necessarily a direct cause and effect, and I think, generally speaking, the best solution to any of that is really kind of proper sex education at an early age, which is something that gets pushed back against, like, you know, not just for the ones that are into that kind of you know, more extreme stuff, to know that, oh, they shouldn't do that, but also for the person that might be on the receiving end of it, so they can actually, you know, have the information that they know that that's wrong, if you know what I mean. BBFC has come, I assume it's the BBFC, have come a long way since the Nasties era. Yes, they have very, very much changed. Hello, Kieran. Such a smooth liar, isn't he? There's interesting aspects to this film. I don't know how much of it was actually kind of intended, but the whole kind of old wrongs coming back to bite you on the arse sort of thing is kind of one of the interesting parts of this story. And, you know, I think it's applicable across so many things in the world. And that's when writing, actually, whether it's by design or not, having that kind of openness to the writing actually sort of helps make a story kind of more adaptable and open. Because I'm much more one of those people who believes in the whole kind of death of the author sort of thing, in that the audience, how the audience receives it, is as important, if not more important, than necessarily what the director intended. Not in every circumstances, but certainly with fantasy pieces like this, having that interpretation allows it to speak to a much wider audience. Partly you have to be careful because of that sort of stuff as well, as a writer. Just dropping in to say hi, trying to get back into a proper sleeping rhythm. See how long you last. That's fair enough. You come and go as you please, sir. Hello, Richard. Has been a while. Excuse the cough. Still remains of that old cold, hopefully. I think Wes Craven does quite a good job with the characters in this, because they're generally quite likeable, and even he's the asshole. You can actually feel a little bit for the guy as well. He's a bit of a creep, isn't he? Bloody hell, Lampy, who cut your hair? Well, I cut my hair these days. Was modelling it after the moon. Makes showering a lot easier. Denied. Oh dear, we've got a chatbot in there. Don't these people know how to do quiet sex, for God's sake? She likes the bad boys. You love that Johnny Depp came back for part 6. Yeah, it was his first one, wasn't it, this film? Almost unrecognisable. Chatbots are bad for society, yes. Part 6 may have had Depp back, but it gave us Super Spencer, which should have been punishable by stay. It is a thing, though, isn't it? I mean, I've long held the belief that when the film, when a story becomes a franchise, then it's all downhill from there. And you can see that in so many franchises, be it like Death Wish or Nightmare on Elm Street or the Halloween series. Although they've tried to pull it back with some of the later ones in there, in Halloween, it's still it kind of feels pointless, doesn't it? Always feels like it's rehashing as well when they do the remakes. How far are we into Nightmare on Elm Street, please? We are currently 13 minutes and just coming up to 10 seconds. There was a lot of buzz about this film around the time it got released, where, you know, certainly when it was out on home video and stuff like that. I do kind of like remember being very sort of eager and also a little anxious about watching it at the time. And there is something which is just supremely creepy about this film, in a way that a lot of the others don't, to a great extent. Has a lot of the feel of this, although, you know, it's got a very a somewhat different directorial style, and the design of the story is very different. But yeah, the later ones just became, well, franchised, much more McDonald's like. I love this effect. I mean, it is a very lauded effect, and it's a great demonstration of the power of lighting. Saves money having the DIY home cut. Yes, it does. I've got a skull shaver type thing. So, and in this weather, it's actually quite nice. It is very quite. It's pretty humid tonight. Have to admit, the title kind of made it stand out from other titles on a video shelf back in the day. Well, you know, I mean, it's a very original kind of story, for one thing. There aren't too many films that kind of... There's a few sort of knocking around, but they hadn't really been kind of... the mainstream kind of thing that was around at the time, be it cannibal films and that kind of stuff. And there is something undeniably creepy about the whole thing. The thing is, I think Wes Craven really kind of captures the kind of dream aesthetic quite well, incredibly well, in fact. There's all those things about having a nightmare which sort of really resonate with an audience. Just this like madness of this scene is just like kind of... I mean, in the later ones, it all became a lot more kind of upfront in the screen. In this, it's just kind of a lot more. I would say subtle. It sort of is and it isn't, but it comparatively is. But just all that kind of dream logic of you know, Freddy kind of transporting around and just suddenly appearing and doing stuff like this, from leaping behind the tree, very thin tree that you couldn't possibly have been hiding behind. Get your nails cut, Freddy. I do remember all the kind of, you know, there was a few sort of copycat people did the kind of glove. I think I tried to fashion one at one point as a kind of early props making type effort, really. I mean, it's not like with actual blades on and stuff like that, but just kind of things that look like them. So I don't remember too many scenes in the other ones which are quite as disturbing as this one. It is a very, horrific scene. And, you know, sometimes to a degree, less is more. This whole set was a rotating set, which is, he was kind of strapped to the wall while the room span round with the camera fixed in place. I'd love to know how they're going to explain all the blood on the ceiling. It's kind of, sort of bodies dragged up the wall and across the ceiling. I mean, how mad do they think he could have been? It was stalwart of John Saxon. Used to remember, I remember they used to sell toy ones back in the day along with a mask for kids, yes. It's amazing, isn't it? Especially with the 80s stuff, be it Rambo or Robocop or Nightmare on Elm Street, that they didn't miss out on the merchandising for children. So, yes. And I always thought it was quite funny, particularly with this series. I mean, funny, peculiar more than anything. That Freddy becomes this sort of anti-hero, considering the kind of character that guy is, in what he's supposed to be. It seems quite incredible that they would sort of look at that and go, yeah, we'll make him the kind of the character that everybody cheers for. Some of the acting in this is just a little bit off. Not enough to break the film by any means, but the mum character is a little bit kind of flat in the delivery on quite a few occasions. It's sort of semi-explained by her being, perma-pissed, but... John Saxon, he knocks on your mum's front door in the morning, you have a new daddy. He's always a good addition to any movie. I think one of the earliest films I saw him in was The Girl Who Knew Too Much. Very young in those days. About 10 years ago, I bought a documentary on DVD about Elm Street. I used to have it was about a 4.5, 5 foot tall Freddy standee I got from the video store. I mean, it's kind of reiterating a little bit, but I do like the whole kind of fact that the parents sort of know that they've done something terrible, but they've kept that from the kids. And it's sort of implication that they know what's going on right along. It's pretty decent, and they go into the making of the films. I wonder if I've seen it, to be honest. Actually, it might even be on the Blu-ray, I imagine. With John Saxon, a gun is just decoration. One does wonder what he was trying to achieve by this meeting. I love the way the lesson sort of, it's sort of implied that it's kind of about what's going on. I mean, that is just a nice bit of writing. Is he Richard? Okay. Teaching Shakespeare. Taught to kids at an age when they absolutely do not care or kind of like have the skill set to actually understand it, generally speaking. And not to say that it shouldn't be, of course it should be, but yeah. Just some creepy ass shit. And that is one of the things that was missing almost entirely, I think, from the as the series went on. It was just the utter sense of creepiness that went out the window for splatter, which a lot of people enjoy. Fair enough. I think personally, for me, I enjoy the kind of the darker, creepier kind of aspect of the first one to almost the entire series. I do actually like the second one as well, though. It's just images like that. It's like kind of that wet slap of the arm on the floor. I do love the way that, because the film, it really, like I say, does embrace the whole kind of dream aesthetic so well that it transforms kind of like there's no sort of spatial continuity particularly. It transforms into somewhere completely different, almost effortlessly. It's kind of fascinating. And there are a few examples in films where that's been done really, really well. And this does feel very convincing. It's a whole kind of thing like when you're in a dream that things that don't make sense sort of don't jar you from what you would expect, because your brain's not working in quite the right way. So having these kind of shifts in location, stuff like that, feels perfect. Part two is definitely the most manly, if you know what I mean. Yes. It would be actually. I was very tempted to do the second one along with Butcher Baker because of certain thematic similarities, apart from anything else. But maybe we'll watch the second one at some point. I mean, the glove is such a stroke of genius, isn't it? As a part of the character, and it just became so iconic in horror. There's something so kind of sadistic about that thing. I've had a quid for every time I woke up screaming in the middle of an English lesson. Screw your whole pass. Read that the glove was inspired by 60s German krimi, starring Klaus Kinski. Can't remember the name, the title, unfortunately. Okay, that's interesting. One of the things about the film, though, is just that this horror isn't something that you can avoid for too long. You know, you have to sleep. You're so vulnerable. When you're forced to kind of like, go to sleep, you have to go to sleep at some point, and it's just, there's nothing you can do about that. Especially when you've got your parents kind of trying to tranquilise you. How effective would that glove have been? Surely the blades would have just slipped around and you'd probably hurt yourself trying to stab someone. I don't know, I think you could do some damage. Those blades aren't really stabby blades, they're more slashy blades, so... But it's just the whole kind of, the way Robert Englund uses it as well, and the scraping of the metal against metal and stuff like that. Just so many things that he does with that monstrosity of a weapon. John Saxon was in a film called The Glove. Kinski would have been an excellent Freddy. Would be a nightmare to work with them. I mean, it's a nice parallel, I guess, in some respects, but yeah. She'd have been so much safer just having a shower. But no, here she is. Really, really tired and taking a nice hot soak. Kind of asking for trouble, doesn't it? Uli Lamel's anecdote about Kinski is hilarious. I don't think I've seen that. Or heard that. Well, she ain't wrong. How that man not end up in a shallow grave on some sets is a miracle, yes. Oh, he was notorious, wasn't he? I thought he was great on in Venus and Furs, particularly. just this madness, isn't it? It's like, because it's a wonderfully liberating thing, I think, doing horror films with dreams and stuff, just because of opens up the scope of what you can do, create situations in the wildest of most normal of circumstances. His Nosferatu is amazing, though. Yeah, yeah, he was an incredible actor. Just a bit of a dick to work with. Apparently, there's plenty of them though. Yeah, I think he's one of those guys that was respected but not particularly liked. Hey Simon, down the pub watching a band. Hello. The one he did on Japanese Laserdisc for the Italian TV, the one set in Venice with Kinski, it's worth seeing too. Okay. She was watching Evil Dead, I think, wasn't it? There's a lot of cross references like that, isn't there, in the films from this sort of era? It's like The Hills Have Eyes, obviously another Wes Craven film, and Sam Raimi. They were kind of communicating throughout several films. The Evil Dead had the torn in half poster of The Hills Have Eyes in the basement and stuff like that. A monster in his personal life too. The least surprising thing ever. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if it was like something kind of like not in place in his head, or if he was just a bit of a bastard or what. But yeah, he definitely not a pleasant guy, but a great actor. Emergency jerky. Yeah, take it easy, Simon. Enjoy the band. Oh, really? I think this bit is really kind of like it is a little bit of a leap, isn't it? She goes from having the dream in the bath and then suddenly kind of figuring out that she can kind of mess around with things in her dreams and stuff like that. It's a little bit of a leap, but you can forgive it. It does sort of suggest why, she gets a burn on the arm and that kind of thing. And Clearly she figures it out from that, but even so. Yeah, I think Herzog had a slightly unusual relationship with him, didn't he? I think he just enjoyed the chaos apart from anything else. Yeah. I just remember that being a bit of a nicky bit. First seeing that, the centipede kind of. Defeated by a bin again. Dear oh dear. It's definitely an interesting little effect, isn't it, with his sort of marshmallow steps. Tina's dropped her guard, so I'll give it 10 minutes. The budget was spent on the revolving room in the mouth phone, yes. I can't imagine the revolving room was cheap to do. It's not easy to do. I've got to say, besides Saw 4, I haven't watched much horror lately. I've been watching lots French Polar. To my shame, Roland Emmerich. Can't say I'm a fan of Roland Emmerich. Plenty of people like his movies though, so I'm not going to damn you for watching it. I think Craven didn't want the marshmallowy stare scene, but the producers insisted. I would say it's one of those effects that doesn't quite work. It's sort of there. It works just enough to not kind of be to break the scene, but it's you almost want it to be a lot more adhesive, don't you? When she's going up there, and it's really kind of causing her to slow down. It sort of pulls it off. It's not quite convincing to me. Police incompetence, dear oh dear. Who'd have thought? Do you believe in ghosts, chat? Personally, no. French polar crime thrillers and like, okay. See, the fun thing is, I mean, I don't believe in ghosts and stuff, but some of the scary films I've seen them in ghost films. Or at least kind of spiritually sort of related films. Things like The Exorcist and stuff like that. It's a very comforting sermon, isn't it? I think this funeral, this cemetery, it's been used in quite a few films. Can you imagine a cemetery that has a film department? I don't know if it was used in. Oh God damn it! I can't remember the name of the film. Never mind. It'll probably come to me later. Just want to put this out there. You owe it to yourselves to watch Fear Over City, Le Marginal, and epic Jean-Paul Belmondo action films. Okay. What sort of era were those? And if you don't have a dream, then how are you going to make a dream come true? If the Saxon and Tom Aikens were ever together, the world would explode. That would have been quite a match-up, wouldn't it? kind of want it to be like The Exorcist with the big MRI and all that kind of stuff going on. Can you imagine those two out on a pub crawl scoring the young ladies like it was 1971? John Saxon's career has been very interesting, really, hasn't it? He's been all over the place, different genres and stuff like that. He's done a bit of giallo here and some horror there, straight dramas, all that kind of stuff. He's always one of those consummate jobbing actors, as I would like to describe him. You can tell it's the 80s. She's in a hospital and smoking. Yes, he did, yeah. Did a lot of Italian films in general, and well, just general European stuff, but so it's quite fun to see where he sort of pops up. Of course, you know, was it Enter the Dragon? This will help you sleep. Yeah, yeah, because that's exactly what she wants at that point. There has been sort of criticism of the parents in this, where they go, you sort of, you know what's going on and you didn't tell the kids. And it's like one of those things you sort of go, well, how do you broach a subject like that? And do you kind of like, you know, how can you really kind of like work out whether it's actually happening or not when it's so bizarre? It's never stood much as a criticism for me. I don't think there was a musical version of this, but give it time. The West End can do all sorts of magical things. Can you imagine that? Freddie the musical. Now, come on, Mum. You've been she's just a bit cranky. Maybe she needs some sleep. Wasn't there a Carrie musical? I don't know why that rings a bell, but If Evil Dead the musical is a thing, Freddy the musical can't be that much of a stretch. I did see for Evil Dead the musical. I've said it before, yeah. Saw it in Toronto. It was a lot of fun. Still hate musicals, though. So damn embarrassing to watch. Well, it depends on the musical. Musicals are not something that I think everyone can kind of latch onto. I think as a form of storytelling, it takes a little bit of, one or two ways of appreciating. You can either enjoy it just because of the spectacle in the music and all that kind of stuff and just be into it for that. But with a good musical, it's got a great story. The songs kind of integrate into that sort of world, but it's a matter of understanding that the world that's been created in the musical is very much a thing of point of view, a character's point of view. It's almost a psychological point of view. So it's not supposed to be reality. It's not even really kind of heightened reality. It's more this amorphous kind of thing. It's kind of weird to try to describe. We did one recently called Alice by Heart, and it's a fantastic musical, great music, fantastic story, quite dark story actually. You have to sort of understand kind of what is going on in terms of how it's telling the story, really, to be able to appreciate the fact that these songs break out. That doesn't sound at all creepy, does it? Come down to the cellar. Come down to the creepiest part of the house. And I'll tell you what we did. You'll know what we did last summer. Thank the Lord we don't have the ravers too often these days. Okay. I mean, Kieran, it's one of those things. It's like even people who say they hate musicals still often say, "I like the Rocky Horror," or "I like Little Shop of Horrors," that kind of stuff. But then we'll dismiss other genre stuff, and I think the genre thing does actually kind of work in sort of like a almost concentrated fashion when it comes to that particular genre. I never liked musicals for very much the same reasons, but I worked a lot of them and I learned to appreciate them because I've had to watch the same ones time and time and time again to do the lighting and stuff for them, as a for instance. So I got very familiar with them, and I found an in to actually be able to appreciate them as an art form. Still haven't seen Rocky Horror. Rocky Horror, Shock Treatment, great film, great films, great musicals. It's not at all weird, is it? You know, keeping a souvenir. Definitely tell it's the 80s with the kind of cropped off shirt, can't you? That's the one, Iris. Good set of pipes on that girl as well, actually. She sings really well in it. Is a very weird one as well, Shock Treatment. I do like the fact that, you know, the mother put all the bars on the windows and stuff like that. Like there's a service around town that'll just come and kind of throw fucking iron railings up on your windows in a day. Jessica Harper didn't do much in the end, did she? She was working, but I think it was a lot less kind of prominent stuff. It's a shame because she's a pretty good actress. Shitting on Britain is Roland Emmerich's motto. That's true. Quite a few American directors. Oh, he's a multitasker. Of course he can do that. Jessica Harper married well, didn't need to work much. Well, that version of Suspiria I got with her got recently is really, really good, by the way. Very, very good presentation. I think they corrected the colour from the various versions that they had to correct it to be kind of what Dario Argento originally presented it as at cinemas and stuff. So, very good. So the mum couldn't smell the coffee on the go. Yeah, those things they give off an aroma. Let me see if I can quickly find it. What? Cult films. Really nice. I think the caffeine keeps the wounds open. Mum's not the most subtle of drinkers, is she? It just... I've got to work out the lighting at the moment because this new setup's a little bit kind of unusual. You think you have 10, also have 10 of the media releases of Suspiria. Ah, okay. Oh, you got it already. Yeah, it's good. It's a good release. I think when it comes to the phone gag, which is just coming up, there was a suggestion that it might have been something else originally, that they kind of shied away from that. I am a bit dark, yeah. Trying to figure out the lighting, like I say. It's a bit hard to tell during the day because the lighting conditions are very different. See if I can just quickly fix that. It's one of the weaker effects in the film, isn't it? Use the Prince of Darkness. Yes, it's a bit more like the old floaty head days, isn't it? I might work on that, Minty. That is a really cool effect. Although I always felt with that effect, with the geyser of blood coming up, that you can always tell that the set's upside down. It's not so much the flow of the liquid, it's more the kind of like everything it interacts with on the way up kind of behaves as if it's hanging upside down. It's very subtle. As I say, on Mr. Plinkett would say, you may not have noticed it, but your brain did. Is that a limited release of Suspiria? Yes, it is. 3563. I don't think I had Kieran. I'd be interested in getting that though. Part 3 is excellent, Minty. The local Mediatek doesn't have Exorcist 2 in their collection, so I'll have to shell out money for it at some point. I say try to appreciate it if you do get it, and you haven't seen it before. Try to appreciate it as something other than an Exorcist movie, funny enough. It is very, very John Borman. Remember buying a collection of 5 Exorcist films on DVD. That must have been a great package. In this scene, don't you just want it to be like kind of like the A-Team music or something? I think there's been a few too many Exorcist films. The third one is one of my favourites, actually. Almost, should probably equal to the first, if not better, than the first one. Exorcist 3 is amazing. Blatty was such an excellent writer, but an amazing director. Just double checking, but yeah, because of the number, I always get mixed up in my head. But the ninth configuration, which is sort of if you ask Blatty, who directed that film as well, he would have said it was a spiritual kind of sequel to The Exorcist, because the books it was sort of originally based on weren't necessarily. There was like 3 of them, and they were quite different in many respects. But the second one in that trilogy is really kind of very different to The Exorcist, but it has similar themes of faith and redemption and that kind of thing. when you look at it, the knife configuration fits in perfectly in many respects. And The Exorcist 3 is just an amazing film. Brilliantly directed, amazingly written, and both versions are kind of interesting in their own right. Knife configuration is to The Exorcist what Deadpool is to the X-Men. I guess you could say that. I don't think that's an entirely unfair thing to say. Sounds like it's not beyond the wit of demons to make a better film. They're demons after all. Very sophisticated watch for those days. Like the first Exorcist a lot, but some of Reagan's demonic BS going to get a chuckle instead of a chill out of me. Probably would these days. I mean, it's been parodied so much, apart from anything else. But, you know, you look at, like, Nightmare on Elm Street, the series of films, and it becomes self-parodying. I think that, you know, the opening of The Exorcist when it's in Iraq is quite amazing. There's so many parts of that film are amazing, and then sometimes it does go way over the top as well. Actually, it's amazing that Linda Blair actually got through that film, making that film intact, to be quite honest with you. I think she suffered lifelong back problems because of the bouncing bed scene. But just emotionally getting her through that must have been something. Especially with Friedkin as a director, he was known for doing some pretty outlandish stuff to provoke a reaction. But I think he was generally pretty careful with her. I was kind of wondering how much of this is actually location shooting. And it's an interesting place they're actually filming this in. It is kind of funny, isn't it, when films like, you know, The Exorcist or The Nightmare on Elm Street, I mean, the parodies that come out of it. Films that were, at the time, incredibly affecting for the audiences that watched it, particularly The Exorcist. And that had such a reaction from people who went to see it. It was this kind of mass hysteria almost. When I was talking to Straw Wiseman about Fight for Your Life on the watch along, Straw Wiseman being the writer of Fight for Your Life, they're talking about the reaction the audiences had to his films. Particularly when I think it was like kind of 42nd Street type cinemas, and it being a blaxploitation movie. The kind of reactions they got from the audience on that, including I think a couple of theatres got kind of torn up by the audience. They got so worked up by this movie. You sort of see the crash cushion, don't you? When she jumps off of that. But Wes Craven wouldn't have had all the money in the world to do this, so it's not like you could take like kind of multiple shots time and time again. It's even a stunt like that's quite dangerous as well, so. It's alright, Freddy will keep you company. You have more respect for the police in that, haven't you? I do love the way that it's just like, she suddenly becomes this kind of like survivalist kind of person. All the booby traps and all that kind of stuff. It's probably one of the more ludicrous things in a film that's about a murderer in dreams. Which was a little bit of a shame that they didn't make a bigger deal of him being kind of like in the real world and actually sort of being able to feel a lot more pain. I mean, you kind of like do have a little aspect of that in the in what Robert Englund's doing, but it's like it's not made that big a deal of. Fire stunts. Always one of the more hairy things to do in a film. Wes does seem to have a thing with booby traps. Yes, he does. Great full body burn stunt though. It is, yeah. And it ain't CGI. love the flame that's giving the little flamey tornado thing. Drunk mummy says, I'm off to the afterworld. Bye bye. Bye bye, Kieran. This scene's really kind of like very well done, in my opinion. Resolves a character arc. Because a lot of, it'd be all too easy to like kind of finished it right there. But the writing's well enough in this that it takes care with a character arc that could have easily been left out. It really does sort of inform upon the character as well, and this is one of those things that actually kind of got dragged through the entire franchise to a degree. It says a lot, in its own right. You can take something away from the film. It's one of the things, though, isn't it, with horror films in general? There's a lot of this kind of attitude that from detractors that say they're immoral or amoral at best. And for me, horror films aren't that. Not for the most part. Some are, of course. Some are very they're there for the reason of just scaring you and just being gross and all that kind of stuff. But a good horror film, good story, can have something to say and something to offer to the audience. I used to suffer really badly from nightmares as a kid and stuff, but when I started watching horror films, that kind of went away. It's very much the kind of thing I sort of took away from that particular scene. It's this scene is the bit that blows it a little bit for me. It didn't need it. And particularly this moment where where the mother gets taken, is kind of infamous because it really does look, there. It looks so much like a dummy. It's not even funny. That was very good. Do you think horror films are helpful for people who want to kill people and watch horror instead to vicariously live out those fantasies instead of hurting people in real life? No. I think, there's that whole argument that that violent people are going to be attracted to violent media, be it video games, be it films, literature. But you've also got to kind of remember that people can be inspired by the weirdest things to do all sorts of stuff, just most innocuous things. It's not necessarily related to what they've seen in a book in particular. If you take that attitude of this might inspire someone to do something, then no story could be told 100% safely and assuredly. So no, I don't generally think that's the case. I think not in the kind of case of like most of this sort of stuff. I think storytelling in general does have power. It does. I mean, the media in general has power. That's why there's so much of a problem with kind of like talking head sort of stuff on social media and stuff like that. These fantasies that are much more closely related to life seem to have a lot more effect than any horror film ever has. When you're talking about kind of channels that spew hate or conspiracy theories or false narratives, and particularly with the kind of rise of propaganda materials which kind of go from various countries and governments, powers, individuals, all that kind of stuff. That's more of a problem. It's an unfortunate side effect of the internet that everybody in the world has suddenly got a megaphone, and not everybody's really kind of ready for it. People haven't been ready for it. It's not the kind of power, and words do have power. It's not the kind of power that most people are necessarily fit to wield all the time. And that sounds like I'm being kind of anti-free speech and all that kind of stuff. But knowing what situations, what they pay off for having all that kind of stuff, that sort of power is kind of important. When it comes to things like horror films, I don't think it's any more dangerous than any other form of media, really, generally. Storytelling has been kind of like one of those things which people have said inspired them to do this, that, and the other. But usually you'll find about 100 other things which are kind of more pertinent to their issues. The guy wanted to turn into a carbon ghost girl and shoot up the supermarket where he worked, and then himself and as sacrifice to go to Danny's Phantom version of the afterlife. Okay. Some people will latch on to something, but like I say, it can be quite innocuous sometimes. People get upset or obsessed with everything from a relatively innocuous Disney movie to a kind of just a regular movie. When you see the kind of it's like Taxi Driver, the guy that shot Reagan? I think it was the guy that shot Reagan. He was obsessed with Jodie Foster, and it wasn't because she does violent things in the movie. He sort of identified with the Travis Bickle character, and it's just kind of, that wasn't really to do with the violence in the movie. That was to do with just this one presence within that movie. Working people out how people can receive films and all that kind of stuff is a very, very difficult thing. It's not easy to give straight answers to that. But like I say, I wouldn't say it was necessarily the movie per se that caused the problem, but it was something that they sort of latched onto. So it's a problem with the person rather than the actual media in that case. And that's something you can't really account for. You know, so many of us, and we're all a bit different, you know. Okay, right. So what I'm going to say here, watching is morally the same as watching porn. Others do it so you don't have to. Okay. There have been many times in my life where I've related to Travis Bickle, and I don't know how to feel about that. The character is interesting. What he does is clearly wrong. Think of the movie if you identify with that. Just remember that the movie is very much from his point of view, and it's a very warped point of view. And he does some pretty bad shit. But I don't know what to say about that. I wouldn't. If what's the best thing to say? I'd say if you've got feeling that you're having problems and you're relating to something like that, it would be worth finding someone to talk to. It's best advice I can give. Because if you know you're struggling with darker thoughts and that kind of stuff, that's when you need to get some help. Somebody who knows better than an idiot like myself on YouTube could offer advice for. But anyway, let's get ready to watch the next one. So, next one, Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker. We'll get that started straight away because otherwise we're going to be here for quite a while. It's just over an hour and a half long. So, give us a thumbs up or a kind of like ready. As soon as you're ready, I'm just going to wrap my baby. And I'm back. Oh my god, it's so... I cannot get this light right tonight. It's a new camera as well, so it's a bit kind of odd setup. I'm just going to try adjust that again. While you're waiting, an appropriate next movie considering we just talked about. Movies speak to people. I'm not going to say that, you know, people can't be inspired by a movie and all that kind of stuff. But stories are important to tell. Some of the most important stories are ones which are potentially a little uncomfortable. I mean, probably should say that at least we're not watching Don't Go in the House tonight. If anyone's feeling a bit delicate. Because that's the movie that really kind of even bothers me. That's a very uncomfortable film. Gonna have to have a play with these settings. Okay, I'll do for now. Hopefully you can all see my beautiful, beautiful face. Right, you guys ready? Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker. Those of you who are watching along. Now this is a movie that I did. It took me a while to get to on the Nasties review. Because it was a very hard film to get hold of at the time. I can't remember if Simon was the one that actually loaned me a copy. But trying to get hold of it was quite a rare VHS to try and find. Apart from anything else. And then it was like, it wasn't available on DVD. There was a lot of kind of like it hanging around. Maybe getting a release and all that kind of stuff. But then it never would. Eventually it did. Obviously I got it there. I think it had a Code Red release at one point, but it was quite a small release. Right, I'm going to have to say that hopefully you guys are ready because nobody's responding, but we better get going with this because otherwise we're going to be here very, very late. So Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker are going to start on the count of 3 and go on go. So 3, 2, 1, go. Now there's an extra on the DVD, which excuse me, they interview separately Bo Svensson and Susan Terrell, I want to say, her, and it's like she is kind of a little bit sort of eccentric, and Bo kind of like certainly says that. And she does give a very eccentric performance in this. Oh no. It doesn't waste any time, this film, when it comes to getting into a fairly graphic death. It's a hell of a bit of stunt driving as well. Makes me wince every time, that one. It's a very clever example, really, of sometimes less is more. In that, you don't. It's very brief what you see, but what you do see just feels a lot more violent than it actually necessarily is. This is a wonderful bit of overkill. Now, I remember seeing the cover of this, kind of like when I was looking into the list and stuff like that, and going, God, that looks like it's going to be something. Not quite sure what I was expecting when I actually got around to watching it. But our original cover, which was on the thumbnail, that's quite an eye catcher, to say the least. No, I remember how I first saw this, actually. I managed to find it under the alternate name, which is the American name, called Night Warning, which is very weird. It's like, kind of like, I don't know why it was called Night Warning. It's such a strange thing to actually call it. Nightmare Maker or Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker always struck me as a much better title for the movie. She does give a really eccentric performance in this, to say the least. And this movie, it kind of goes places. It's not it's not a standard kind of slasher movie or something like that. It has sort of some shades of Psycho. And I don't know if it was actually kind of in part sort of inspired by that. But it's that with a kind of like really twisted police investigation kind of aspect to it. She's a creepy character, even right from the beginning. Feels a bit 1970s. This, so I was, 70s is as 70s does. Trying to remember what year this was made. 1982. So close enough to the 70s to justify a 70s feel. Some of the worst carrot shopping ever. It's foreshadowing for how careless she is with knives in general. A bit extreme as an opening. It opens your eyes, doesn't it? For such a brief moment, it's like kind of like, oh wow, okay, you really did get a feeling of impact from that particular scene. God. Yeah, that's the way her character's going to be. She's a little loving. I do wonder how many takes that took. Getting a bit of, she's a lady of the Lord and a fan of organised religion, right? She's a bit of a fruity character, to say the least. Funny enough, there's a big aspect of the film which is kind of about sex and sexuality. It's kind of really the core of the film in some respects. It's a familiar face. There you go. And this is one of the things with the video nasties, actually, is it's not exclusive to the video nasties, but there was quite a few films which in that kind of explored certain themes, and the LGBTQ kind of stuff as we know it now was one of those things that got slipped into many of the movies. Nightmare on Elm Street 2 famously has that sort of undertone to it. For me, Butcher Baker was up there with Driller Killer and Nightmares in a Damaged Brain, all three written off as video nasty nonsense, but actually very clever portraits of diminishing mental health. I'd say like Nightmare in a Damaged Brain is it's almost an exploitation of that idea. It does go into it, but it's not in depth, but it does really kind of drag you into this sort of tortured mind kind of thing. It doesn't really explore the idea so much as it uses it, if you know what I mean. But it's there. I mean, movies like this and Human Experiments and Cannibal Man as good instances of films that kind of explored certain fringe subjects. Say fringe subjects, but you know what I mean. It's not kind of mainstream ideas. Okay, I think I know how this one's going to go as a film. How can a girl turn that offer down? Especially on that moped. It's going to be a real babe magnet, that one. Auntie's jealous. Driller Killer is a classic. Very interesting film, in my opinion. A lot more interesting than people ever give it credit for. I say ever. Some people do appreciate it. At the time, it was just thought of as being like pornography of violence and stuff, but. The band in Driller Killer was an interesting aspect of it. It's like it almost Reno's personal soundtrack going on. Pickled again. One does wonder if any of those pickles actually come out of the basement. Watched Driller Killer while still at university. I do remember seeing it on the shelves back in the day, and the poster of it up in the video store. It's one of my abiding memories of the time. She is a really good actress in this. She's like kind of like just got that. You know, she's totally unhinged, but you almost can't put your finger on what exactly it is about it. Yes, she's a bit clingy, this one, yes. It's one of the seamier feeling parts of this movie. And that's one of the wonderful things with the like 70s and 80s horror films of this kind. I actually really enjoy that sort of seedy kind of feeling to the stories. It goes places. It kind of pokes at you just gently. Blood red toenails, that's got to mean something. Is that a remote control in your pocket? You're just pleased to see me. Well, that escalated quickly. Not Jobby, she's got problems. They're just burying the body. It'll be fine. It'll be done in a couple of minutes. Look on the bright side, at least your pickled tomatoes were good. He's quite an imposing figure, is Bo Svensson, and what his character is like in this is not a pleasant one either. There's not too many pleasant people in this film. seeing him in the interviews, though, he's kind of he is an interesting character. He does seem a very kind of a fun guy. He's like kind of like, you've got to believe what you say and what you do in the movies, and then he sort of shortly after he kind of qualifies it, he goes, it's not you, it's the character that. Yeah, well, thank God for that. Especially when you go to see what the guy actually is kind of like as he goes on in this film, because it's basically it's a bastard against a bitch in this. What would Freud have said about the knife? I am a little surprised that no one's in handcuffs at this point now, considering. He really does look kind of like the hard ass, really, really well. Oh, it's a real shit-eating grin, isn't it? It's like I'm gonna fuck you, boy. I mean, them two for me kind of like bounce off of each other quite well. When you see her in the interview, she does kind of have the sort of characteristics that you sort of see in the performance to some extent. Obviously, not the stabby sort of stuff, but she's kind of an intense, almost kind of twitchy sort of character. And Bo Svensson is very kind of similar in sort of like that kind of like a very gregarious kind of sense of humour, although when he plays the character he's doing it in a very malicious kind of way. You don't really get that from him as he is as a person. So it's kind of like, bits of those. It is funny when you see the two characters kind of two actors out of character. There's clearly a certain amount of themselves that they brought into it. I don't think what these people are doing is good for society. If everyone acted like people in this movie, I think it would lead to a downfall of society. It's a movie. That's all it is. I mean, movies don't tend to kind of like showcase particularly average Joes in kind of like average situations. I mean, there's not much of a story to tell there, is there really? It's usually the extraordinary or the remarkable. Not necessarily as a positive thing, but that nonetheless. Polygraph tests. It's like they're still bloody using, despite the fact that they're very unreliable. So the "Do you like girls" thing is kind of like I mean, it is a running theme with that character in particular, but there are kind of like a lot of references to that throughout the movie. It's not necessarily the most subtly handled version of that discussion, and probably not the most what's the best way to say it? Not the most sensitive way of handling a lot of that stuff. Cannibal Man is probably one of those that actually does that kind of story a lot better. But I don't think I've ever felt that the movie has any kind of has bad motivations. I think quite the opposite, personally. I mean, these guys, just this entire world seems to have massive issues with various things, sexual identities, and all that kind of stuff related. The detective is like rabidly homophobic. I mean, that's the thing. He kind of uses that sort of as a weapon, as a cudgel, throughout the movie. And it isn't just him that kind of represents certain aspects of that throughout the film either. So there you go. Yes, another part of the um, part of the relationships that are going on. And that's one of the reasons why I don't think that the film actually kind of um, doesn't kind of have a bad intent, because he's not being framed as being a good person for that. In fact, I mean, the character is the detective is an astonishingly horrible person, to say the least. He's deeply unpleasant. I mean, it's almost, the fact that he kind of like said about lynching puts into context quite how homophobic he is. You're putting him into KKK kind of territory. As vile as the racist would be. God, she's got a shrine. And how much of that is fantasy in her head, and how much of it is real? Because clearly, yeah, he hit her, but because she wouldn't leave him the fuck alone. So how much of the rest of it is bullshit? These American houses are always huge, aren't they? Typical, typical police. Yeah, yeah. I'll just come up with a reason for being in here. Crikey. She's mean. God, that punch was telegraphed. So she just stood there and took it. Was playing nice cop now. So he'd be quite a good detective if it wasn't for the fact that he's absolutely just a raging bigot, you know, because he's not 100% off. And it's his bigotry which kind of like runs him down the wrong direction. Subtle. He needs a prescription for that. I think most of the people in this movie need a prescription of one kind or another. She even eats in a rather eccentric fashion. Okay. He is absolutely surrounded by these bigots in this movie. And the thing is, it's like these people who kind of like purport to be straight in this movie tend to be the weirdest ones. So you know, it's another thing you sort of look at in the movie and go, and sort of use as a guide to whether or not the movie's being mean or whether it's using it as kind of an analogy. Really sort of got as well, you know. Does inject a bit of humour into the character, doesn't he? I mean, it is a sick sense of humour, but he's kind of funny as well. can always trust a policeman, folks. Very helpful girlfriend there, definitely. It's an interesting aspect of the film in some respects, is that, you know, Billy's certainly doesn't come across as being gay or anything like that, but he's accused of it, and a load of characters around him are so rapidly on the other side of things that you know, it's like, but it does have the whole kind of like with this scene where it tries to kind of shift any ambiguity away. What this man needs to do is for his gay side. Bo Spencer's a big guy, isn't he? The size of him. I mean, it's a certain analogy, isn't it, in this movie? It's kind of like it's this sort of witch hunt kind of aspect. Well, you could almost sort of get a kind of Witchfinder General kind of thing going on with this movie. And I'm not quite sure what it is about this movie that actually got the attention of the police. Possibly the cover would have been a big part of it. Whether or not they actually, well, they would have had to have watched it, because this is one of the ones that would have been brought up for obscenity, being a video nasty. So they'll have to have watched it to be able to present the case. I'd probably have to have watched it several times, because, you know, the store would have 4 or 5 copies maybe. So I don't know if it's aspects of the violence, or whether it's the other aspects, like the talking of sexuality and stuff like that. Or even the abusive kind of talk about it, which would have bothered him. I would probably say the latter, not so much, because it was the 80s, and let's be honest, the cops weren't really that interested in that kind of thing. certainly isn't. Why is David Lynch better than Abel Ferrara? Well, who says he is? It's a matter of taste, isn't it? I know how I think it's better, but actually, I think they were so wildly different. I don't think they're comparable. Wondering if I've seen her in something else. Creep again. Surprise! I love the look on her face when she does that. Was he going to ask her how many times she came? Well, they're all in on it, aren't they? She's going to have to scrub him down now. God, there's such weird characters in this film. Not so much since he knocked his head off. She's so well balanced. That is an official police theory, by the way. God, does that sound familiar these days? It's an interesting thing, really, when it comes down to these kind of films and these kind of stories. People have asked me, why do you like horror and those kind of films? And to go, well, they can tell stories that that can't be told in other places. They can cloak and fold in ideas and discussions that wouldn't sit well in the mainstream, and that's kind of important. There's countless examples of that in horror film making that deal with subjects that would be otherwise taboo in mainstream storytelling. Cannibal Man again is a great example of that, because it's the circumstances of that film's making meant that everything had to be cloaked and coded. Yield to the Night is no, not Yield to the Night. Victim is another one that takes taboo subjects in British piece of cinema, so therefore was like kind of under strict censorship sort of pressures. But the people who knew when they watched that movie what the film was actually talking about, but they couldn't be explicit and upfront about it. It's not a horror film, but horror films in particular, because they're so sort of marginalised, you can sort of hide stuff a lot more effectively in a film like that. Talk about subject matters that wouldn't be acceptable in your average Hollywood movie, as for instance. Cannibal Man is a masterpiece. It's a really good film. It's got a good sense of humour about itself as well, actually. I really do admire that film. Talking to a photo, always a good sign. It's not so much it's a photo, it's a shrine of candles and all that kind of stuff. And, she's clearly got problems and has long had problems. And Susan Terrell really does a fascinating job in this movie, because ostensibly the character is very kind of over the top. That much is fairly obvious, but she does have subtle aspects to the performance as well. Just the little looks and the kind of little affectations that she has. That she's clearly aware that she's struggling to contain all this. It's not to say that she's a particularly sympathetic character. One of the vile characters of this obviously is the detective, Bo Svensson's character, who is a particularly malicious and bigoted kind of guy, and very openly so. I mean, one does kind of wonder when it comes down to the writing, what experiences came to the formation of this story. That would be kind of interesting, talking to the writer on that one. I mean, this movie could almost have as a subtitle, "You only hurt the ones you love." So I've been quite quiet on this because it's been a long time since I've seen this movie, and I've forgotten quite how far she goes with trying to keep hold of him. She just pushes the girlfriend out of the way. It's like, fuck it hell. It's just like that moment. It's like, oh my god, Just such a telling moment, isn't it? It's interesting as well. You look at the set dressing on here, for instance. So like behind him is like the crayons and the stacky toy and all the cuddly toys and all that kind of stuff. It's a weird, almost sort of like reverse Oedipal kind of thing, isn't it? It's a bit of a parallel, isn't it, in some respects, to Suspiria, with this particular scene. In that the characters in Suspiria are infantilized and made to be children, despite them not actually being children. It's exactly what's happening in this for different reasons, but there is even with Suspiria, there's a kind of like a coming of age kind of thing. It's a weird kind of coming of age tale, that sort of transition from childhood into young adulthood. And this is sort of flipping that on its head to some degree, because she's clearly wants him to be the eternal child and not to leave her. And in some respects, there's that whole kind of like the bird leaving the nest kind of analogy. Except there's this kind of perverse sexual twist to it as well. Oh my god. But she does a really wonderful kind of unhinged performance. God, it's the Ark of the Covenant. Am I shaving? Strange question. Good God. Well, she's definitely missed her calling, hasn't she? She's definitely getting a bit yikes, isn't she? I mean, I have to say, I completely, I only remember parts of the film. It's been about, what, it's got to be at least 6 or 7 years since I've seen this film. I've forgotten quite how far down the rabbit hole this girl goes. Oh, hello. Doesn't sound like the brightest of plans, does it? It's like, yeah, you distract the mad lady while I go kind of rifle through her stuff after having just been caught doing that previously. Yeah. She didn't take too much persuasion to get to do it either. God, I mean, this must have been bloody terrifying filming this. She's damn intense. I'd have been straight out the damn door at this point. daily delivery of bloody cakes, isn't it? No shit. Shit. I did it myself. She really does get unhinged in this. It's like it's kind of a breathtaking performance in some respects. I just hope she wasn't a method actor. It does have a little bit of a sense of humour about itself, this movie, that is for sure. Let's clean up the murder scene while the people are in place. Dear, oh dear. I keep saying the milk's good for you. It gives you strength. That's quite clearly not the case. Yeah. See, again, I'm sort of getting those kind of like feelings from like little bits of Suspiria kind of creep in. Um, like Jessica Harper's character, Susie Bannion, gets drugged. To make her stay in the place. Exactly what she's doing here, really. She almost kind of effortlessly sort of switches just from one kind of state to another. It's just bang like that. It is really quite interesting as these sort of performances go, that she's able to just kind of like do that. It's just weird because you get this sort of fractured state of mind kind of thing going on. Why does she keep coming round to see this? She's A little bit peculiar. What a tire. What a nice glass of tranquilizer. I mean, milk. God, she gets intense. Oh, she's really not your average bad guy type, is she? Not the average bad guy type. But she really does kind of lay it on. Oh my god. Awkward. There's one thing about some of the video nasties like this one. It's like the really good ones really do feel uncomfortable, and there's aspects of this film which really do go places. Wow. I love this soundtrack, by the way, as well. It's very video nasty kind of soundtrack. So one of the things with the soundtracks of a lot of the video nasties, there's something about that video VHS kind of era, especially with the made for VHS, made for home release kind of films. So the soundtracks on them are quite amazing. Harry Bromley Davenport, when he talked about the soundtrack to something like Extras, for instance, was kind of fascinating because he was like kind of like very self-deprecating about most of his work in that respect. But there's something about that kind of synthy type soundtrack, which is just like very of the time. It gets that kind of synth sort of thing does give a kind of very familiar sort of very very of the time kind of feel to the films. And there's a reason why I used that little bit of music from Boogeyman 2 for the Cynical Celluloid reviews, because it just absolutely typifies the era. Definitely a bit of a Mrs. Voorhees kind of thing going on here, isn't there? Is it, is it Benjamin Raspel in the jar? I mean, she's definitely should be up in the top 10 of unhinged people. And just like for the performance alone, it's just like, because it is out there. Texas Chainsaw kind of territory here, aren't we? I've always kind of liked these with the lighting in these kind of scenes. So many films that they do these kind of nighttime scenes in jungles and not jungles, in woods and whatever. It's, I mean, it's very unrealistic when it comes down to it, but there's just something wonderfully familiar about it. I mean, lighting these kind of scenes is an art form in its own right, but doing that right and getting the cinematography correct for that kind of lighting, it's really not doing a nice job. Good God, the state of those! Oh my God. She won't need to send her any more birthday cards now. Yikes. I will have to say, only it is one of the most uncomfortable performances to sit through for the right reasons. It's kind of what she was going for, I guess. Just the absolute commitment to that is fucking incredible. And yet, despite all that, despite all the kind of excesses of the film, it doesn't feel particularly sleazy. Don't Go in the House really does feel grimy as hell when you sat through it. It's not a comfortable film to sit through. This isn't in many ways, but it doesn't feel like you need to have a shower after it. Nightmare in a Damaged Brain, that one, oh my god. I don't think we're in Deliverance country, are we? Oh, oh. And I laugh at the quite a few times in this film, but it's mostly out of discomfort because it doesn't have that real sort of like, whoa, okay, that sort of slightly out there kind of aspect. Well, I say slightly, way out there kind of aspect. And it's when I kind of like talked earlier about kind of like why was it on the list and that sort of stuff. I'd genuinely love to know. Was it the content? Was it the cover? Sometimes we never really get to find out. What's commitment in a moment? Surprisingly powerful sometimes. Don't Go Now is a wonderfully grimy film with disco scene to boot. Yeah, I do remember that disco score to it, the musical score to it. Is it Trapped in Boogie Fever? Oh, he's just been waiting for this moment, hasn't he? Poker to death. Here's the law. Ew. He's such a vile character. I'd forgotten quite how good this film is. Oh, he's going to give you it. That's pretty well acted death scene. Wow. And he knew. He knew what that guy was trying to do. Wow. My sports jacket, you monster. Huh. Well, there you go. Butcher Baker, Nightmare Maker. I tell you what, it's been such a long time since I've seen that film. I'm kind of glad I kind of sat down and watched it with you lot because, yeah, it's that's quite a lot going on there. It's not a perfect film in some respect. Again, I always say no movie ever is perfect, but it does a lot of stuff, and the kind of underlying sort of themes of the movie do sort of pan out. Even I mean, for me, Billy is not a gay guy, but he is kind of caught up in that kind of homophobia and all that kind of stuff. He's definitely the good guy in this, but it's amazing performances, absolutely amazing performances in that. All around, really, it's not really bad performances. It's kind of a heightened reality to some extent, but it kind of works for that movie, doesn't it? Ah, bit of in the air drum feel there. Yes, it is. Yeah, thank you for joining me with those. I don't know who's still around and all that kind of stuff, but I hope you had a good time watching that. Definitely a good selection. I haven't watched either of those films in quite a while. I do love a bit of Nightmare on Elm Street, and having sat down and watched Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker again. I think the last time I saw it was whenever I did the review, which was quite a while ago. I think it's still up. I don't think YouTube's pulled that one down. But yeah. Sound effects in this film, yes. But shame Kerry couldn't have been around for this one, but there you go. Hopefully she'll catch up with that stuff at some point. I should be able to do another stream next week, hopefully. I don't see any reason why I won't. But we'll see. I've still got to get on with a bit more work on the current review, because what we're dealing with the computer this weekend, I've not had any time to deal with that. I've got a couple more days off, so hopefully I'll be able to do a little bit more of that tomorrow. But for the time being, you guys take care. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will see you, if not next week, definitely the week after. So until then, take care, folks, and I'll catch you later. Thank you for joining. Bye-bye, folks. Good night.